And it just pained me so much to see a computer not used at night. So we would go in at midnight, open up, and turn on this IBM 360 Model 40, and we'd turn on the tape drives, and we'd turn on the printers, and I'd sit there and punch cards out and run punch cards through the computer and run programs all night long, and we'd hide the fact we were there. And I just wanted to run programs, anything I could do, anytime with a computer. That was my life. I took class after class after class, even programming classes that had no transfer credit at all for me. The year after that would be my third year of college, but I didn't have the money for college, so I worked for 1 year to earn the money for college. And I worked programming a computer. I walked in a door, they're building a computer. And so I got a job programming it, and while I was there, I told one of the executives, I used to design all those mini computers back in high school. And he said, did you ever build one? And I said, no, I couldn't get any companies to give me the parts. I couldn't build one. And he says, well, what if I get you the parts? He had connections through being a purchaser. He had connections to get me parts from this chip company, Signetics. Whoa, I went home that night. I designed up a relatively small computer, simple computer, came back and told him the parts, and he got me the parts. And I built it. And I built it with a friend, and we drank cream soda, so we called it the cream soda computer. And this friend said, you should meet this other guy that goes to the same high school as us, Steve Jobs. And he likes electronics, and he likes to build things with electronics, and he also likes to play pranks like you do. You two have a lot in common. So Steve Jobs came over to the house where we were building this cream soda computer. And the cream soda computer was just a little board with a bunch of switches to dial in ones and zeros and buttons to push those ones and zeros into memory, just like every mini computer I'd ever designed in my life. So it was just a raw computer processor. Well, Steve Jobs came over and started telling me about some of the devices he built to count frequencies on displays and blow them up. And I started talking about the computers I designed, and we talked about the pranks we had played. And I had played so many pranks, and he played a couple I hadn't, and I felt bad about that. But I claim I was the #1 prankster in our school. I was just unknown. So we hit it off. Now Steve was very much a part of the counterculture hippie movement that was popular in those days. And I was sort of not. I admired it a lot. I admired the great free thinking of those people, but I didn't want to use any illicit substances. And and in my life, I wanted to have my feet on the ground. It's like some artists can talk very strange talk, but I wanted to do things that make sense. I'm not even a theoretical scientist. I'm a practical scientist. Practical scientists want to build things with knobs and controls that actually work. And I was always going to be that sort of person, be sort of the center of life and have a home and have an income. And Steve would just kind of float with anybody, and friends would take care of you wherever, and he had bare feet and ate seeds, but we got along. We were best friends for 8 years. And one of the things that he talked about doing back in high school was how he had made a film with some friends with a process called claymation. In claymation, you take a piece of clay into a shape and take a picture, and then you move the shape a little and take another picture, and you build a movie frame by frame by frame. So it's very much like, nobody ever mentions that when they talk about Pixar, but even back in high school, he had that kind of a start in that direction. Steve was, and he pretty much, I always thought his family was kind of normal. I didn't realize a lot of things until later, that he didn't like his family, that he wasn't really a part of it. Because he was adopted. So anyway, around this time that I met him, I headed off to Berkeley for a year there. And Steve and I played around. We made a lot of free phone call devices at Berkeley. And I had this very strong principle that, first of all, anything I would do in life, I would have to be willing to tell my parents. And that would keep me from doing things that were too bad. So I told my parents, we both told our parents, that we were building these little devices. You put tones into a United States telephone, and it would dial free calls all over the world. And we just thought it was so amazing, and that we weren't going to do it to make free calls to save money. We told our parents that, and we stuck to that. We paid for our own phone calls. We just used this device to see how many countries we could get to, and route calls around the world a few times, and talk in one phone and do it a second later in the other phone. And we also told my parents, I'm young. If I get caught, I'll probably get some easy punishment, and it's worth the fun. And I never got caught, so. But I was at Berkeley for a year, and I took all graduate courses in computer hardware and software, and Steve Jobs would visit a lot. We'd go to concerts. We both liked Bob Dylan music because it had more of a serious message about the world, and it was cleverer than just simple little fanciful Beatles music. After that year at Berkeley, I went to work again to earn the money for my 4th year of college. Some of us have to work to earn the money for college. And the hottest gadget project, the hottest technology project of the time, 1971, was the Hewlett-Packard 35 calculator. The first scientific calculator, the first handheld calculator ever that could do the jobs engineers do with a slide rule. You know, you pull up the slide rule. I was a slide rule whiz in high school. You know, I could use all the inverse scales, and as an engineer, you're constantly doing calculations. Now you had a handheld device, and you could push buttons, 5, 4, 6, 7.3, and then push a button to get the cosine. And this was just such an incredible project. Well, they heard that I was a great computer designer somehow, and they called me in for an interview, and they hired me on the spot to design calculators. So I got to design the hottest product in the world. Hewlett-Packard was such a great company. It was started by engineers, and I believe so much in engineers, because engineers work with calculations that have an answer that's right or wrong. They work with numbers, they work with that sort of thing, and a circuit works or it doesn't work. It's not subjective like history or politics. So I loved engineers. Hewlett-Packard was started by engineers and infiltrated with engineers. The managers were engineers, and the managers and the executives were engineers, and the ideas for new products that drove the company back in those days came from the bottom, the engineers thinking out their own ideas just as much as the president of the company coming up with ideas. And the reason is we were building products for other engineers. So we knew their needs. We knew what they wanted. We had a bit of the marketing in us even though we were engineers. An engineer at Hewlett-Packard was so respected in those days. The country went into an economic recession about 1973, and a lot of companies laid off a lot of people and dismissed them from their jobs. But Hewlett-Packard decided instead that everyone would take a 10% cut in salary, and you would get 1 day off every 2 weeks, so you would have less work. And I loved it. I had more time as a kid. I did management with a little bit less money, and a lot of people objected to that, but I thought it was really good because you were treating your whole company as a company, as a family. Your company was a family. Everyone mattered, and you didn't want to put anyone out on the street without a job. So I admired the company for that. After a couple of years there at Hewlett-Packard, another company, Texas Instruments, came out with their version of the scientific calculator. Before Texas Instruments, we at Hewlett-Packard based our calculators on a mathematical notation called reverse Polish notation. If you want to add 5 and 3, normally in English we would say, or in any language, you'd say 5 plus 3 equals. Well, on the Hewlett-Packard calculator, you would have to type in the 5, save it, and then the 3, and then you would say add, and it would show you the result. It was a little odd, but it's one of the steps that we go through when we're writing computer languages, and people write formulas on paper. You have to translate that formula into a set of steps that happens in the right order inside of a computer. So what we typically do is translate the expressions that normal people write into reverse Polish notation that a computer can calculate. The fact that our calculators used reverse Polish notation meant they were more like real computer stuff, real computer science stuff. They were more advanced in the world. It was almost like we were part of the metric system. And it's odd. So eventually, Texas, and we had a big card with a huge formula of all these little subterms of this minus that squared and that minus that squared. It was almost as bad as statistics, if you ever take that, some of the different inferential statistics formulas. Huge formula, and I typed in the answer. It would take me about 3 tries to get the right answer on my Hewlett-Packard calculator, but I could do it. Well, one day Texas Instruments introduced their own calculator that was going to use parentheses and not reverse Polish notation. Just parentheses to tell what order to do things in. And we laughed at it. We laughed at it. Oh, those parentheses, it's like, what a toy. And the funny thing is, you know, when the Macintosh came out, people were going to say,